about what's going on, not just in your patch, because one would like to think, although bearing in mind what was said before the break, one isn't certain that they would know what's happening in your patch. But also, they need to be aware of what's happening everywhere else. The first time I ever lobbied my current MP was about the demise of what was then the London and South East Region Interlending Service, because that was, arguably, that was the beginning of the dissolution, or partial dissolution of the library network. And that organisation folded, it became that much more difficult to borrow a book that your authority didn't have, but the one next door did. So they need to be aware of the bigger picture. Can't really say any more about the details for that lobby, other than to give you the date as a sort of claiming date. A normal procedure is that you kind of gather a late morning in Central Hall, and then there will be entertainment, if that's what you call speeches from the great and the good, and maybe a bit of more entertaining entertainment, before people go across the road to go and see their Member of Parliament. And of course it will give you another opportunity to do a lot of networking. What else is going to happen next year as far as Speak Up for Libraries is concerned, I don't know. We've got a debrief meeting from this conference in a week or two, about 10 days' time. We haven't got a date, I just forgot what it is. Anyway, in the not too distant future. So we will be looking at, okay, what can we do? There are elections in some parts of the country, I think next year, so we might do something towards that. But to some extent, any suggestions gratefully received. No, it's gone flash right out of, oh yes, out of one ear and into one ear and out of the other. But that does remind me, feedback gratefully received. There is a feedback survey which I think you have been emailed about. Will be emailed about, assuming that we have your email address, which is more in a moment. If we haven't got an email address for you, then we will try and mail it out to you, assuming we've got a mailing address. But we would really like that survey back. It won't be terribly complicated. SurveyMonkey, you can't do a terribly complicated thing, but it is, whether it's the quality of the sandwiches or the quality of the sessions, we do want to know in the hope that we can do another one next year. Since I'm on the subject of emails, if anybody has not given us their email or given us permission to share their email but wants us to do so, or wants us to be able to do so, because I know people have been swapping them and swapping details, then please do tell us, because we can effectively email everybody who has given us permission to share their email with, you to do that. Badges I've mentioned. There was a reference earlier on today, and is Richard from Bolton still here?
I think he's gone.
No, okay. Well, he did leave, and I think they're still on the front desk, some leaflets giving a synopsis of how Bolton were lobbying, or Bolton campaigners were doing some lobbying against what their council's proposals. When he was sat there, I was stood behind him at one point, and his, the full Bolton Civic Trust response to their consultation is a hardback about that thick. But that may be worth reading. If anybody else has stuff that they want to make generally available, if you rush downstairs when we finish, you can get it on the table before everybody else leaves. Or you can take it to the pub. Again, there is a little slip of paper down on that table explaining how to get to the Marlborough Arms, which we have, where we have a room, space booked for us on the ground floor, and it is wheelchair accessible, for those that want to continue the conversation when we finish in about 20 minutes time, 25 minutes time. The instructions are there, but it's basically leave this building, turn left, take second left, and you're on Torrington Place, and you just keep going till you hit the Marlborough Arms. It's not difficult to find. Right, I think that's almost finished. The thing I need to do now is just do the traditional, for want of a better word, votes of thanks. First people I want to thank are Paula and Freddie, who are CILIP staff, who have been here all day, not quite out of sight, because you have seen them on reception and scooting around doing some of the technology and putting the petition up this morning and organising the food and drink. And I'm not sure if they've certainly volunteered, but I hope they're getting paid for it. But they didn't have to give up. They didn't have to give up their Saturdays, and they have. Because even if you're getting paid, sometimes you have better things to do. So to Paul and Freddie, to Kathy and Paul and Julia from Task Force for coming, and Kathy and Paul in particular for sitting up here with their mouth in the lion's, their heads in the lion's mouth. To the people who organised the conference, and I can't really, I was there at the organising meetings and sticking my four penneth in, but actually in terms of doing the bookings and the publicity and even stuffing the packs, I was conveniently absent. Sometimes conveniently. So Elizabeth, in particular, who did the Eventbrite stuff and did all the bookings, and to Guy and the rest of and other people at CILIP who organised the attendance lists and some of the lists that you got in the pack, and various people who'd stuffed those packs and all the rest of it. So thanks to all of them, and of course chiefly yourselves. Thank you for coming. This is the fourth time we've run a Speak Out for Libraries conference, preceded, as somebody reminded me at tea, by one that was just run by a library campaign and Voices for the Libraries, but it is becoming tradition. It's becoming something that does work and is always well attended, and we've always found that however bad the situation is, and let's face it, it didn't get much better in most ways, we found that we can actually get something out of it for ourselves, for each other, and make contacts and try and extend the network and try and push back where the bad things are happening. What we'll be talking about next year, who knows, but we'll worry about that nearer the time. The last duty I have then is to introduce, when we were talking about the plan, in the planning meetings which I did attend, we were talking about we need something to either rouse the rabble or send you home with a song in your heart. Those that were here last year, arguably you had Alan Gibbons doing the former. Those of you who are here this year will hear John Doherty doing certainly the latter and possibly the former as well, I don't know. John, for those who don't know him, and we've only met for the first time today, is a children's author, poet and singer. I can see one of his books on here, but I'm not going to steal his thunder because he's presumably going to quote from it in a minute. But he's also a library campaigner, and so if you look on his website, there is a very specific page about libraries and campaigning against what's happening to them. And probably better known to many of you than